select committee of MPs yesterday. She said that she planned to meet with Sir Richard, primarily, as she put it, to understand effectively the process.
When did you ask me that? Haven't seen it, mate. Haven't seen it. An automated message saying it's all automated. It's the bot reading it, and then it's the bot replying after decided that it needs to reply. The bot is bot-tastic. Anyway, I've just had a note here, mate. I just popped over to Dr. Adrian Vella. Not the Adrian Vella that you used to do. No, he's a lawyer. And he said, oh, don't worry about charging for those notifications. So I got my statement, my passport, and my birth certificate expecting to pay sort of. Actually, they charge you 25. So he's my point of reference in the future. Authority. He's notarized loads of notarizations, you know. No, I am McDonald's by sort of just by Shah, really. Oh, I don't want to go, mate. Not again.
To focus on testing AI projects. A report has warned plans for 17 new gas-fired power plants could...
What is it? I don't want to go to Valletta, mate. Oh, you mean go on your own? But where are we going to have then? Interest there. I'll tell you at Starbucks. I'm just in the queue for McDonald's, yeah? Suppose we could go to Victoria, couldn't we? Yeah. Alright, then I'll out of the queue at McDonald's. Going to Victoria now. ASAP, quick as you can. Lovely, son, lively! Ta-ta.
With Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Morning, 4 minutes after 9 on Thursday, February the 25th. Coming up in this hour, the JCVI, the all-important Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, seems to suggest that prison officers, quite right, and prisoners should go ahead of teachers and police officers. Hang on. So the copper doesn't get the jab, but the crook does? Really? We'll look at that in more detail. Here's the latest news from the BBC. They're determined now to set targets to get working class employees. Lord only knows how they're going to define it, but it does put you in mind of this great comedy show.
The first ever Way Ahead meeting is a key opportunity to consolidate as well as to think some big thoughts.
W1A. Now that's a great comedy. Reflecting on the news we just heard on LBC, Fraser is to be brought back, with Kelsey Grammer reprising his role. That's a good comedy. It's not a great comedy, is it? Or are you going to tell me that every single episode always hits the mark? And staying with US stars, Gwyneth Paltrow's so-called long COVID healing techniques criticised by the NHS.
Nick from Worry at Breakfast. Call 0345 60 60 973. Text 84050. Nick from Worry at Breakfast on LBC.
Been a long debate, hasn't it? And goodness knows I've talked to the Home Secretary about it, the Commissioner of the Met, the Education Secretary, all sorts of people. Where should teachers, where should police officers, where should firefighters as well, actually? Let's not forget those men and women. Where should they feature in the so-called cohorts or list or whatever you want to do of folk who get their vaccinations? Well, the government's... Every time you ask a politician, they all refer you back to this all-important JCVI, Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, and I think, was it about the fact, well, hang on, they're not elected, you are. You need to tell them what to do. Teachers, you should have had the teachers vaccinated through the half-term holiday. Well, now, as I say, this all-important JCVI is to say teachers, police and other key workers should not get priority for vaccination, but prisoners can be vaccinated en masse. Yes, you did hear that correctly. So the copper can't, but the crook can. The teacher can't, but the prisoner can. Now, these recommendations were handed to ministers on Sunday. Oh, that's probably why Mr. Hancock was loath to get into it with me. Advising the programme vaccinate under 50s by age, also deciding people from ethnic minorities should not get priority. This is a report in one of the newspapers, The Times, and I think they've got this to themselves, otherwise known as exclusive. This now all goes to cabinet level, and the ministers are expected to sign off of the next vaccine. But it says here this week. Well, they've only got today and tomorrow, haven't they? Vaccines Minister Nadine Zahawi said earlier this week, that's who I argued with. It's come back to me now. That's who I argued with, Nadine Zahawi. We will absolutely follow what they, JCVI, recommend. The sources say the committee was taking an if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach after the original success of the early stages of the vaccination program. Here's a question for you. I mean, I find this quite extraordinary. Police officers who, in some instances, and one is too many, but regrettably it's considerably more than one, have been spat at by people saying, I've got COVID, you can have this, and then spit. We're not looking after them, but we are looking after prisoners. Quite extraordinary. Colin Sutton is a former Detective Chief Inspector and Senior Investigating Officer, served at the Met, and joins me now. The men and women doing the job now, how do you think they'll react to this, Mr. Sutton? Good morning.
Good morning to you, Nick. I think it's appalling. I think, you've got people who, in the course of their ordinary duties, are going to have to come into close contact with people who can't do it from behind a perspex screen or a shield, can't do it distanced, and yet we're not prioritising them. I've no problem with prisoners, with people in prison getting healthcare, getting their jabs, in accordance to the normal sort of bans that are there in the country as if they're outside prison. But the issue of police officers and indeed prison officers being prioritised, we've been dependent upon these people to try and make things work for the last year while we've been going through this hell, and yet we won't try to make them safe, and they are dying. Police officers have contracted COVID and are dying in significant numbers now. We've lost, getting on for a dozen or so now across the country. I just, I'm just appalled that we don't look after these people who serve us and put themselves on offer for us.
What do you imagine the men and women who are brave enough to pull on the uniforms today would make of all of this?
I think they are probably used over the last few years to not being treated particularly well by those in authority and by the government. And I do know. I speak to them.
Yeah, of course.
And they just shrug their shoulders and get on with it because that's the nature of what they do and how they've always been. But it's not right. It can't be right.
Agree with you on that, Colin Sutton. Thank you. Former DCI Senior Investigating Officer with the Met. Listening to that is Owen James, who's Editor-in-Chief of Inside Time. That's the national newspaper for people in prison, and Mr. James has himself served time in jail and joins me now. Owen James, are you going to make the argument for this? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Well, I totally agree with the detective who says that people in prison should be treated the same as people in the community. I don't think there's a hierarchy of privilege here. The Shadow Justice Secretary, David Lammy, said last month that it's frightening that the government has lost control of the virus in prisons. Over 100 prisoners have died so far of COVID. The infection rate in prisons is doubling every month. I'm not sure how many prison officers have died. I think 30 or 40 prison officers have died. 1 in 4 prison officers have tested positive. That was by the end of January. Have tested positive for the virus. And bear in mind, Nick, look, prisoners. You don't like me saying this, but they're as vulnerable in prison as people in. They're locked in a box. They're locked on a wing on a landing. The virus is being taken into them. They're not going out into the community and spreading the virus, although a lot of them will be, because Nick, about 70,000 people a year get released from prison, and at the moment 1 in 8 prisoners have the virus. They've tested positive, and in the general population it's 1 in 16. So there's a crisis if we don't get to grip with this virus in our prisons.
But there's a crisis among police officers who are keeping us safe, and who, as we heard from our other contributors, in a considerable number, but not necessarily the same level as prisoners. We must look after them first, surely.
Well, I'm not sure about. These are all human beings.
Hang on, Owen, if you've got 2 vaccinations, right, you've got a young man or a young woman who's doing the vaccinations, and you've got a prisoner in front of you, and you've got a copper, and you've got 1 shot, one vaccine, who are you going to give it to? Come on.
Well, there's a moral question, isn't there?
I'll answer you for you. I've done it. It goes to the police officer. Done.
Yeah, well,
next.
Well, okay, it goes to the police officer, and the prisoner dies, and we've sentenced the prisoner to death because he's a prisoner. Not
Okay,
because he's a
I'll do the
criminal.
other. It goes to the prisoner, and that copper gets spat at in the face, and he dies. Or she.
Which is outrageous. I've got to tell you. Listen, I'm not a champion. I'm not a champion of prisoners or criminals. I'm not a spokesman for prisoners or criminals. What I want the public to understand, I was in prison for a long time, Nick, as you know, deservedly so.
Yeah.
And we have so neglected and abused our prison system over the years that we've got to get to grips with how we treat people in our prisons, so that when they come out, they're less likely to cause more harm and distress. And in this case, if we don't get to grips with this pandemic in our prisons, I think there's a time bomb coming when all these people are coming out of prison. 1 in 8 prisoners infected. 70,000 people in the next year. 70,000 people will be released from our prisons. So 1 in 8 of those people are infected.
Owen James, thank you for your time. You're Editor-in-Chief of Inside Time, a national newspaper for people in prison, and as you reference, you have yourself done time behind bars. Let's get your. I'm sorry. I hear you saying it's terrible that anybody dies. Of course it is, but I'm sorry. I'm missing something here. Treating a prison the same as a care home. In many instances, that elderly person has had no choice in the matter of finding themselves in a care home, and it's a product of illness or whatever. A prisoner, of course, everyone in prison is innocent, by the way. A prisoner has had a choice and has decided to go to jail, probably quite a high level of crime. John in Burgess Hill, what would you say, John? Good morning.
Hi, Nick, first time caller, nice to speak to you.
Good to have you on, sir, thank you.
Just very quickly, I'm no bleeding heart, but I do agree with immunising prisoners in prisons. Just think of it. Imagine going into a cinema where there's high probability of 50 infected people watching a film. They could easily infect another 300 people who come out and they just continue to spread it. Think of a prisoner actually as a petri dish, if you like. Where
what's a copper?
Cooking away.
What's a copper? What's a teacher? To what they're exposed to? If that's not a petri, I call it petri.
Absolutely in the same way.
Then let's do the teachers before the prisoners.
I would do them simultaneously.
We haven't got enough. Okay, same question to you. Same question to you. 2 vaccines with the pharmacist or whoever giving out that vaccine, like Sim, who I met down at Lewisham Health Centre yesterday. Just give her a name check again. And one's a police officer, one's a prisoner. Who's going to get it in your book, John?
Prioritise. Look, do a risk assessment, see who's likely to spread the most. In fact, one police officer, and listen, I honestly am not a bleeding heart, and the police do a fantastic job. Teachers absolutely do a fantastic job.
But you'll do the prisoner first?
No, I would prioritise.
I don't know what that means. What are you saying? They're both the same age, they've both got the same wrist, they're both the same weight, they're both whatever, same ethnicity. Come on, who gets it?
I will prioritise. The prisoners aren't coming out of prison.
All right. Well, I'll give in to the police officer. John, good speaking with you. Thank you very much, sir. Let's see what others make of that. And also coming out, let's see what you make of the news from the BBC. They will set targets for a proportion of working class employees following accusations the broadcaster lacks diversity. They'll also be having, these are their words by the way, meaningful targets and inclusion toolkits to tackle non-inclusive behaviour. Whew. Don't know about you. Puts me in mind of...
Pearson is taking Ian through some of the advantages of cutting his current salary, which we are unable to reveal here for ethical reasons, to a level more comparable with someone who earns a lot less than that.
It's the brilliant W1A. Now that's brilliant. Fraser's okay. Fraser's coming back. But to my knowledge, W1A is not. And neither's Veep. But that's a personal crisis, I give you that. Just turned 9:16 LBC News headlines, Thomas Watts.
The schools minister has insisted checks will be in place to ensure consistency in teacher-determined GCSE and A-levels. Of people are developing antibodies against COVID-19. And EU leaders will hold a summit this afternoon to discuss issues including the vaccine rollout across Europe. Rain slow to clear across the southeast, but sunny for many today, a high of 11 Celsius.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. For those who need to make a journey, the M23 remains closed southbound between the M25 and Junction 9 at Gatwick Airport. As a result, it is very busy in the area, especially on the A22 and the A264. In Kent, traffic's being held on the M20 eastbound at Junction 2 at Rootham. That's after an accident. That's very busy on the approach as well. And also problems in Dorset. The A35 is closed westbound at the A31 junction at Bear Regis, and this is because of an accident. It's closed all the way up to the Toll Puddle turnoff, and there are long delays on the approach.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC.
Getting the car you want, but not all the features you want? Standard. Unless you choose the fully loaded Grandland X Griffin Edition with absolutely everything as standard. Now $289 per month plus $2,601 initial rental. Vauxhall. All Griffin, no bull. Search Vauxhall Grandland X Griffin Edition. Personal contract hire on Grandland X Griffin Edition 1.2 Turbo. Subject to status, T's and C's 18+. Initial rental 2,601 plus 47 months at 289. 32,000 total contracted mileage. You will not own the car. Limited availability while stocks last. Vauxhall Finance Leasing. Dormazan Sleep Valerian Hops Oil Drops is a traditional herbal medicinal product used for the temporary relief of sleep disturbances caused by the symptoms of mild anxiety. Exclusively based upon long-standing use as a traditional remedy. Dormazan is not a sleeping pill, but easy to take liquid drops, which can help in the quest for a restorative and natural good night's sleep. Always read the leaflet. A. Vogel's Dormazan. Available at most good health food shops and chemists. Or buy online today at avogel.co.uk.
Uh-oh, we've heard some of you haven't been using your bonus points offers in the Nectar app on your Sainsbury's shop.